The odds of it happening, at least the ratios correcting, the law of averages, a regression to the mean coming into the fold, it's to me as good. It's a trade of a generation, maybe. It's a trade of a decade. I don't know how else to say it, because you don't get opportunities like this very often, where a double would be just returning to its average. Usually doubles require massive amount of risk, and this would just be being average and getting back to what it's averaged for 200 years.
And it's going to get to the point where when the BRIC nations really take hold, and I don't think it's more than 5 years, I think it could be as early as 3, and we're really outside looking in as a country, then I think wholesale amounts of funds will be leaving this country.
The other thing I would say is I'm not certain why the ratio between gold and silver has any validity as an investment consideration. The fact that silver is 16 times more prevalent in the Earth's surface doesn't go to very much to their relative utility.
In today's episode, 3 financial experts, Andy Schectman, Peter Grandich, and Rick Rule, talk about the recent situation in the gold and silver markets. They discuss the current situation in the East versus West silver arbitrage, the role of the media, and how everything ties up into a master plan from the BRICS nations to destroy the dollar. We watched hours of content to bring you the best clips, so you don't have to. Smash the subscribe button, like the video, and turn on notifications so you do not miss out our daily recaps. Also, check the links in the description if you want to see more. Enjoy the episode.
I think what it does is it slowly and continually erodes its value and its demand. The dollar's not going away today or tomorrow. But when you realize that these countries can now use any currency they want, it starts to chip away at the settlement value of the dollar. And again, there hasn't been a challenger to the dollar, but it appears very, very, very obvious to me that commodities, in particular gold and oil, which seem to be remonetized across the globe, are replacing the role of the bond market. And in particular gold, but a bond that can be weaponized and stolen or confiscated the way that they're doing right now with the Russian assets and inflated or defaulted upon. I might be one of the few people that really believe rates are going way higher. I know Martin Armstrong does too, but everyone talks about rates being lowered. I see rates going higher ultimately. And, I think this is a game that, will not end very well for people who are holding traditional assets as rates go higher. And I think that's going to happen. I really, truly do. I think rates will go much higher, because even if the budget was balanced today, who's going to pay for the 150 trillion in unfunded liabilities? And who's going to continue to hold the US dollar that can be weaponized, that's going to see rates rise, where a country that's chosen inflation over austerity, but as rates rise, it's going to destabilize all of the bonds in circulation. So between the issue of default, of inflation, of instability, where last year was the first year in 45 years where gold had less volatility than the bond market, a country that has chosen to weaponize its treasury market, these commodities are becoming more valuable than the currencies backing it. So yeah, I just see a period of time where countries are going to trade with local currencies with one another, and use gold and oil as a default settlement, which will continue to erode the value of the dollar in all of the trading and the settlement, and then completely erode the reserve status as bonds are sold and commodities are purchased. Now, when they issue a gold-backed settlement currency, that really changes the game, because, I guess the bottom line with all of this is that they settle, they trade in local currencies, they settle in this common settlement currency, and reserves would go into gold instead of into treasuries. The combination of that chips away tremendously at both aspects of the dollar hegemony, the reserve and the settlement status. And the pushback against so many of these dollar bulls is the bond market, the bond market, the bond market. But Who the hell wants to hold any of our treasuries of any duration?
Now, Peter Grandich talks about the impact the media has in gold and silver prices and how the Brics nations are following a secret master plan to debunk the dollar as the global trade currency.
Biggest is no advertising dollars there. They make an awful lot of money from the financial service firms that are pushing all the crypto types of currencies. And therefore, that's what they build around. The second is there's always been a Rodney Dangerfield, who was an old comedian that used to say he never got any respect. And gold has never gotten the respect. In fact, it's been treated like kryptonite by the general financial community, at least in the US, for as long as I've been in it. It's an amazing phenomenon when you talk, especially to young financial advisors. I just gave a talk to a couple weeks ago, and I say, can you name the 3 tier 1 investments in the world that are recognized as, the single best? And of course they say stocks and bonds, but they never can guess the third one. And I tell them it's gold. And yet none of you, and none of them did, have any exposure or your clients to it. Why is that? And why has something for a couple thousand years where certain currencies and paper monies have come and gone, and this thing can still buy what it used to buy 100 years ago, 500 years ago, and you don't have any? They all say almost the exact same words. Mr. Grandich, why do you want me to buy something that you don't think is going to go up? Well, I tell them, because if it does, what you own a lot of is likely going the other way. And that's the big missing ingredient, I think, to gold. And what I think has happened to it is that people have seen that value, particularly out of Asia and your area of the world, and because of what's happening with the Brics. I'm a big believer. I don't want to jump all over, but I'm probably one of the biggest voices that are positive in what would be called Main Street, Wall Street still at these days, on the belief of where Brics are going and how negatively impacted countries like the United States are going to be. And I think part of that is because they recognize gold, and gold will be some part of their, whatever it is, alternative currency, some type of tradeway, digital support to gold. But that, I believe, they are going to be a big believer in. And let me just say this: I believe the Brics will be to world trade in the next 3 to 5 years the impact the same as the Industrial Revolution had on world trade.
In the continuation of the episode, Rick Rule discusses the role of the paper markets and how the physical markets will win in the end game. He also shares a message with all gold and silver stackers. Rick highlights the price manipulation that's likely to occur going forward and how you should be positioned to profit from it. Remember to subscribe to the channel and watch the video to the end to get the most out of it. Let's get back into the episode.
Manipulation occurs in all markets, and the manipulators generally try to profit on the difference in scope and scale between the physical market and the futures market. The futures market being much larger, much more leveraged, and very prone to outsized moves as a consequence of moves in the physical market. Therefore, if you're trying to profit on a down move in silver, you would build a ladder in the silver futures markets and then use a physical position, probably borrowed, to sell overnight during the period of time when the market is the least liquid to generate the most downward momentum in silver in the short term so that you could cover your futures positions as they reacted to what happens in the futures market. That exact same strategy happened in the decade of the 70s from a long point of view. The markets are manipulated in whatever direction the manipulators think will be easy to move. I wouldn't confuse yourself in the silver market by thinking that there was a 4-decade-long conspiracy to depress the price of silver. They didn't have to do that because the market did it. The US dollar was strong. You don't need to work really hard to cause something to decline that's going to decline of its own volition. I believe in 2022 that whole circumstance changed. And I believe at some point in the future that the short-term manipulation that happens in precious metals markets will be from the long, not the short side. And I don't think that there is as much overt manipulation of the formal media as people think there is. I think that perceptions are forged in a odd alliance of big thinkers, the World Economic Forum and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think that the leaders of government have to influence the media people too much because I think they went to the same schools and they hold the same value. Now, there are periods of time where governments can show favorites to media, but I would suggest to you that the whole emergence of social media has meant that there are sources of information and opinion that are disintermediated, that are much, much, much more difficult to manipulate. And that's one of the reasons why I am delighted with the proliferation of social media, irrespective of how much misinformation, disinformation, and impoliteness that takes place in social media. The fact is that I can get unvarnished access to opinion leaders, opinion shapers, and to popular opinion itself via social media. That's one of the reasons why I'm so comforted by its emergence. When I look at popular media, broad media, even broad media that is allegedly geared to me, Dow Jones, Bloomberg, places like that, I'm struck by the centric and complacent nature, their bias. And obviously I'm more concerned about overtly state-controlled media, the CBC, the BBC, people like that. But I suspect, again, that there's much less of an overt control of the media, because I don't think they need to overtly control it. I think the values of most media journalists and the values of most defenders of big government are precisely the same. There's no need to manipulate it because it's already there.
What do you think of today's show? Do you think gold and silver prices will be manipulated to the upside moving forward, squeezing the big banks and making a fortune for the average Joe that is stacking metals? Post in the comment section your honest opinion, share this video with someone who hates Bitcoin, and send a super thanks if you find our recaps valuable. Now watch this video right here because it's a perfect fit for you. I see you on the other side.